Hi, I'm Tim Blunt. Welcome to White Lake Lifestyle. Today I got a friend and a co-worker growing up as youth here at White Lake, and that is Tom Riel. Tom, thanks for meeting me today and discussing your life here at White Lake and your contributions that you've made back to the lake. So we'll just start it off at Tom and I first met working in the change booth at Golson's Beach, and I understand they don't use change anymore.
Everything's tokens.
Everything token debit card. Yeah. So, Tom, welcome. Tell us about you growing up here at White Lake. You were just one of the few kids that actually lived year round here at Lake.
Well, I appreciate you having me. And before I get started, let me say if I miss somebody's name or some dates, I apologize because this is all 50, 60 years ago. So we'll see how it goes. But I moved to White Lake when I was 6 years old. And when I grew up here at White Lake, it was not a popular place to live in the wintertime. It was the people in Elizabethtown treat us like we lived out in the middle of nowhere, out in the country, out in Lisbon or something. But of course, it was a popular place in the summer. And as a youth in the summertime, the kids on my street, there were several kids on Timbo Street. We lived about 5 streets apart. So I'm sure we probably met before the change booth stuff, but we all played Marco Polo and hide and seek and games like that at night. We all went swimming at night, and it was just a big community thing, and it was great growing up here in the summertime. I, like you, met my wife here. I met my wife a little earlier than you did. I got a picture of us when she was 5, I was 6. She lived 3 houses down from me on the street. Of course, we never really dated or anything until after I got out of college. But as growing up, we were close because we played together and just were in the community. And our families were all together too.
Well, Tom is probably we've had several great skiers come from White Lake, and Tom, I consider one of them. And tell us about the ski hills and how you skied around the world representing, of course, we're proud of you being from White Lake and what you have accomplished. And if you could tell us about your skiing.
All right, thank you. Yeah, well, of course, growing up here at White Lake, I like Timbo's talked about Golson's Beach. I started working there when I was 12 years old, and I worked there all through my senior year of high school. And all our spare time, we all were skiing. Sometimes early in the morning, we would go out jumping. We would be in the water with our gear on, waiting for the sun to come up so we could see the jump to hit it. That's how dedicated we were, because we wanted to go when it was smooth and calm. And that's one thing about us skiing at White Lake. Growing up, we were all rough water skiers. We all could handle really tougher conditions because we were used to it. Because White Lake was it was always rough because there was always boats running around. But in 1973, I started jumping the ramp. My parents, my dad said, "Do not learn how to jump the ramp. Stay off the ramp. Don't jump." You know what I did? I went and learned how to jump the ramp. So in 1973, the Ski Hills was formed in 1971. This is the original patch. Uh, I became a member in 1973. Uh, they had a ski tournament here, and it was done over here at Keith's property. It's where what we call the swamps in that area. It was a 3 event: slalom, trick, and jump. And of course, everybody did all 3 events. And I jumped, and I ended up winning second place. And my parents never said another word to me about jumping the ramp. It was fine. So, with that said, then I got involved with the Ski Hills more, doing ski shows. And the first ski show I ever did was the state fair. Um, it was in 1973. I was a clown. Tommy Faircloth was the other clown, and we skied in this real tiny place at the state fairgrounds, and actually had a manhole out there. And Tommy Faircloth was on this manhole, and we did what was called a quick pickup. And I was a clown, and he was a clown, and we course, fell over the jump and all that kind of stuff. But that was my very first ski show and the very first introduction to ski show stuff. I've seen the ski shows here at White Lake because we did them for the Blueberry Festival. I wasn't involved. I was younger. Um, um, Ricky McCormick came one year. That was in 1973 to help perform at the Blueberry Festival water ski show. That same year, they used him at the state fair. He came and skied at the state fair. Another year, we had Mike Siderhound come. He's from California. He was a big slalom skier. I think he held a world record too. And he came and performed in a ski show that we had for Blueberry Festival. And then it kind of progressed after that. My last year in high school was 1975. I think that's the year you graduated also. Of course, he was in Fayetteville. I was in Bladen County here. Um, I was asked to join a group of skiers that were from all over the United States, from California, Georgia, Florida, just everywhere you can imagine, Wisconsin, North Carolina. There was two people from White Lake, Bill Winstead and myself, and I said I would go. And so when I graduated from high school, 2 weeks later, I left and went to Wisconsin, where we all got together and trained. Um, we trained there in Wisconsin for 2 weeks at the Dells. It was for Tommy Bartlett's put this group together, and it was the Expo 75 in Okinawa, Japan. We were one of two exhibits representing the United States. Where we skied was the East China Sea. I had never skied on salt water before, so I didn't know. What the heck? So the first time I skied, I remember I decided to barefoot and I was going to do a flying dock. We stand up on the dock with no skis on, and you jump in the water and take off barefoot. And I told the driver, I said, give me 40 miles an hour. He said, sure. So he hit 40 miles an hour. And the only thing that were hitting the water was the heels of my feet, because salt water is a lot more buoyant. So you don't need it quite as fast as speed. I didn't know that. So I was able to drop that speed down about 6 miles an hour and do just fine. But it took me a little bit of time to get acclimated to that. But the site we skied on, we skied off of a stage. It was about 8 foot off the water, and it had a platform down here where we all would ski off, and then we had to come back on and ski up on the stage, which was kind of a challenge because it was all the girls, the ballet line had to ski up there, the doubles line, everybody had to ski back on the stage except for the barefoot acts. And of course, our kite flyers, we would the clown act had a disc, and he would walk out there and put the disc down. It had X on it, and these guys were fantastic kite flyers. They'd come right in and they'd set it right on top of that disc every time. But one of the funniest things was where we skied. It was a rock. It was a cliff on one side of it because it was a blown. It was all coral, and the guest house is up there on top. And the first time one of the guys went out to fly, he took off the beach and he took off and flew out. He released and started coming back in. He said as he came in, he looked down, he saw these guys running to machine gun nest. So he got down on the ground pretty quick and got our translator over and talked to him, let him know, well, hey, this is part of something going on. And what it was the guest house for any dignitaries that came to the expo. They stayed at the guest house, and they had guards and everything else there. But that was a little exciting, and it was a challenging place to ski. The jumps they built for us, I'd never done it before until I went to Wisconsin. We jumped boats over ramps. It was part of the beginning of the act. We'd go out with 4 boats, and 3 boats would go over the first time. Then you have 2 boats going over side by side, and we all went off the same jump at the same time. Then the other jump they had sitting out there, this thing was a 7-foot high jump, and you talk about something that would throw you up there. It was pretty challenging.
Nothing but sky.
Yeah, I mean, you went off this thing pretty good, but and that was Chicago. And then the next summer I came home. I kind of had gotten in kite flying a little bit, but not really that much. I just kind of started a little bit before I left. But a lot of us when we went over, it was a 3 month gig, and we had an option for a 6 month gig, and they did not renew the option, so we just were there 3 months. So at the end of it, there was there was a big party for us on a ship called the Esmeralda. I think it was from New Zealand. It was a three-mast sailing ship, had like 300 sailors on it, and they had a huge party for us. And you'll probably see the ship this summer when they have the 250th anniversary, and they bring all the big sailing ships from around the world, the tall mast ships.
Mhm.
This will be one of the featured ships in there.
Right.
Another that night also they had a party for us on what was called the floating city, and the floating city was actually a city that I think Japan had built it, and it was you walked out and it was a floating city and everything was there you needed. You took an escalator up, and they took us in and gave us all these medals that were in a glass case, and we all said something, whether they could understand us or not, because we didn't speak Japanese, of course, maybe a few words, but um, and that was it for that year. That was an exciting thing, and like I talked about a little bit about kite flying. I decided to come on home and start school at Bladen Tech because I didn't know when I was going to get back, so I did not try to apply to anywhere. But when I got back, I came through Alaska, flew home, and luckily coming through customs, I had, because I was over there, I bought a lot of gifts for my family, my grandmother pearl necklace and just rings and all kinds of stuff. So I bought an army duffel bag to carry all my clothes in. I had two suitcases, had them full of gifts, and I went through customs. Uh, he had to declare what you had. And I had two watches. I put two watches and two cameras. And the guy went through customs. He said, "Let me see your stuff." He looked at my passport and things. He said, "Yeah, you're good." He said, "By the way, you're from White Lake." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm from Elizabeth City. I learned to swim at White Lake." Going through.
It's amazing how many people have visited this lake through the years growing up. Well, Tom had lived in Florida for a little stint there, and he moved back to White Lake, and Irene went to law school, and Tom started a very successful business and made White Lake his home again. Two beautiful daughters, Virginia and Madison, and he gave back to the community in just one way, several ways, but one of them serving on the town board and as mayor pro tem for 32 years. And it's because of his love and his family's passion for the lake. And Tom, I appreciate you sharing this time with me. And if folks remember Tom and me at the change booth, we're doing good. Just bring a debit card or credit card. I don't think to take change. But in closing, Tom, any last words about our lake and about our lifestyle here?
Well, one thing about growing up on White Lake, I mean, I had a love for water, of course, because I skied. And in college, I studied a lot of water things. I studied biology and chemistry were my major subjects. And with that, I pursued a business, a passion for water. And when I moved to Florida, I found a business that I applied for called Aquatic Systems. And they treated lakes for algae and aquatic weeds. And I went and applied for it. And the guy hired me on the spot. And I told him I was going to be there 2 years. I was going to move back home and open my own business. Well, I ended up staying there 3 years and went with another company 1 year. In 1988, I moved back home and opened up North Carolina Lake Management. Like Timbo said, my wife, Irene, we got married in 1982. She decided to go to law school, got her through law school. She's an attorney now in Fayetteville, DA's office. I have two beautiful daughters. Uh, One works for Fidelity and one's a professor at State. And I have two beautiful grandsons. And I hope to teach both of my grandsons to ski at White Lake like I learned.
Well, Tom, again, thank you for sharing the history at White Lake. And in closing, I just ask for you all to pray for our community, pray for each other, and pray for our country, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Tom.
Appreciate it.